My husband had a car accident and is currently being treated at Zhongshan Hospital. I thought it was a scam, and with a smile, I said, "Officer, are you mistaken? My husband just told me half an hour ago that he was on a business trip in a neighboring city." Tom, male, 32 years old. By the way, there was a woman in the car. She said her name was Lillian. At this moment, my smile froze, and I was completely panicked. When I arrived at the hospital, Tom had already finished his surgery. The doctor said he didn't have any major issues. There was a slight fracture in one of his arms, which has now been bandaged. As long as he is monitored, he can be discharged if everything is fine. When I saw Tom, he was still somewhat conscious, leaning against the hospital bed, fingers tapping away. In that moment of our eyes meeting, I could clearly sense that he was quite anxious. "Honey, why are you here?" Let me explain this first. I shook the phone in my hand. Just as I walked in, I happened to receive a message from Tom on Instagram. He said there was a small issue at work, and he might need to stay in the neighboring city for a few more days before he can come back. If I hadn't seen it with my own eyes, I would never believe that Tom has deceived me again and again. "Jane, I didn't mean to hide it from you. Originally, I planned to give you a surprise, but who knew an accident happened on the way, and I was afraid you would worry." When Tom said this, there was actually a hint of grievance in his tone. He truly is a master of acting. If I didn't know the truth, I might have really thought I misunderstood him. "Really?" "Yes, Jane," Tom answered definitely. "By the way, how did you know I was hurt?" I answered truthfully, "The officer told me." "I see." Tom's expression looked a bit unpleasant. "Did the officer say anything else?" Seeing his guilty expression, I couldn't help but sneer. "Are you hiding something else from me?" "Of course not," Tom quickly denied. He glanced at the door and said anxiously, "Honey, I feel like there's nothing going on anymore. Let's hurry back home." He said he wanted to come over and pull me away. I knew what he was afraid of. It was nothing more than the fear of me encountering someone I shouldn't meet. But it seems that heaven does not favor him much. His hand had not yet touched me when Lillian walked in, holding Tom's examination report in her hand. Seeing me, she seemed even more surprised than Tom. "What are you doing here?" This question should be asked by me, right? One is my husband, and the other is my friend. How could you two be together? In the face of my inquiry, Lillian's expression was somewhat awkward. Tom also intended to argue with Jane. "Listen to me, it's not what you think. Lillian has already admitted it." "That's right, it's just as you see it. I've been with your husband. He has been with me the whole time he said he was on a business trip." Hearing this news, my heart felt like it was being cut by a knife, and I couldn't help but yell at Tom in anger. "How could you do this to me?" I knew these two scoundrels were not innocent, but I never expected them to be so shameless. Tom blushed, lowered his head, and said nothing. It was Lillian who couldn't hold back. She smirked maliciously and walked over to me, sizing me up from head to toe. "Jane, it's not that I'm criticizing you. Just look at yourself. How do you resemble a woman? Your figure is bulky, your complexion is sallow, and this coat you're wearing is something even a cleaning lady wouldn't wear. With you like this, do you really think you deserve Tom?" She seemed quite pleased with herself, and after humiliating me, she even threw a flirtatious glance at Tom. Such shameless behavior would test the patience of even the most good-natured person. I swung my arm in a circle and slapped her face. I watched the blush rise on her delicate little face. I couldn't help but laugh. "Of course, you don't deserve it. After all, scumbags and cheap women last forever." Lillian was driven mad by me, swinging her fists in an attempt to fight back, but I pushed her down to the ground. "Why do you hit me?" I blurted out that I would hit you. Do I still need to check the date? In the end, it was the doctor who came and stopped this farce. Tom originally wanted to go home with me, but Lillian cried and said, "Tom, your injury still needs to be monitored. The doctor is worried about complications." Tom, who values his life, immediately compromised. I was completely disappointed and turned to leave the hospital. Just now, I was holding on with nothing but a surge of anger in the hospital. As soon as I was hit by the cold wind outside, I immediately felt my misery. My husband actually got together with my friend. What kind of suffering is this, and how could it happen to me? The more I think about it, the more it hurts, and I can't stop the tears from flowing. By the time I got home, it was already 3 in the morning, and my eyes were swollen like walnuts. After lying in bed, my thoughts began to drift. Tom and I were college classmates. After graduation, I stayed in this city for him. Here, I have no relatives, no friends. Besides him, I have nothing. Even later, in order to marry him, I moved far away. I severed ties with my parents and never regretted it. But how did he repay me? He actually cheated on me. And the person he cheated with was my friend. Lillian was a colleague I met during my first job. At that time, we were both newcomers, working in the same project team, having meals together every day, fighting together, and building a revolutionary friendship. Even though I left my job later because of having a baby, we are still friends. We often make plans to eat together and go shopping. Even if we haven't seen each other for a long time, there is still so much to talk about. Now I finally understand that what we have is not just common topics, we also share the same man. Just thinking about what they might have been doing together these past few days makes me feel nauseous. I won't just let this go. The next day, I picked up Xiaobao from Auntie Wendy's house. Seeing Xiaobao's aggrieved expression, I felt a wave of guilt in my heart. Knowing that Xiaobao has been sick these past few days, I still abandoned him and went out by myself. Just thinking about this makes my hatred for Tom uncontrollable. Little Bao hugged me tightly. "Mom, I miss you." I patted his head. "Mom misses you too." Xiaobao is a delicate and understanding child, who has never left my side since birth. He must have been terrified by what happened yesterday. After I fed him a little, Xiaobao became sleepy and gradually fell asleep. Tom came back at 3 in the afternoon. He stood at the door, holding his suitcase, looking pitiful and shrinking back. According to him, he and Lillian got involved a year ago. At that time, I was completely focused on my son, and he felt neglected. Wanting to get my attention, he reached out to Lillian. He originally wanted to cut ties, but Lillian threatened him that if he stopped contacting her, she would immediately tell me the truth. So, Tom had no choice but to keep pretending to get along with her. This reason is truly ridiculous. I couldn't help but laugh. Clearly, he couldn't resist the temptation and cheated, yet he still blames me. Xiaobao is 3 years old this year, and he has seen children no more than 5 times. Every time he comes home, he says he is tired and would rather play on his phone than take care of the child. At first, Xiaobao was still very close to him. Later, after being rejected by him many times, she gradually stopped seeking him out. So he began to complain that the child was not close to him. He said both good and bad things. I always feel that Xiaobao lacks a sense of security, precisely because he hasn't felt a father's love. Moreover, in that situation last night, I didn't take Xiaobao to the hospital, and he didn't even ask where Xiaobao was. Another one. When Xiaobao was over a year old, I also thought about going out to work. I considered asking my mother-in-law to help take care of the child. But she flatly refused, saying her health was poor and she couldn't take care of the child. Yes, she couldn't take care of the child, but she could play mahjong all night long. The child I gave birth to, if others help me take care of them, it's kindness, if they don't help, it's their duty. I understand this principle. I have no right to demand that others must help me. I can only do my best to be a good mother. Perhaps there was some neglect towards Tom in this process, but that should not be a reason for him to betray our feelings. Moreover, if it weren't for his lack of paternal love for the child and his unwillingness to hire a nanny, I wouldn't have devoted myself entirely to the child. I absolutely cannot accept Tom's behavior of shifting blame. Of course, I'm not being unreasonable either, because I still haven't figured out what to do. Infidelity is always either a one-time thing or countless times. I don't believe he can change for the better. But because we had Xiaobao before, I couldn't just leave without a word, I had to plan carefully to minimize the harm to the child. I absolutely cannot give the child to Tom. I must find evidence first. People really can get carried away. After observing me for a few days, Tom found that I had no unusual behavior and concluded that I wouldn't cause trouble for him. He gradually started to show off. He even felt that his charm was so great that I would compromise for him. Or he thought that I was now married far away, without family or friends to back me up, and without a job, lacking the confidence to confront him. Or perhaps he thinks I am compromising for my son. In any case, he feels that he is the one in control. At first, they would occasionally belittle me with words. "Jane, look at you. Do you even look like a person after having a child? Your waist is thick, your legs are short, and you just look unappealing. If it weren't for me working myself to the bone out there, you two would have long been living on scraps." On the surface, I appear calm and carefree. In reality, I still feel a bit sad inside. In the evening, I looked at myself in the mirror, haggard, aged, my clothes oversized and worn. How long has it been since I properly took care of myself? Perhaps it was the time I asked Tom for money. He hesitated and didn't want to give it, saying how hard it was for him to work and how I always wasted money. When he learned that there was no money at home to buy groceries, he pulled out 200 yuan from his wallet, slapped it on my face, and told me to save some money. At that moment, I felt my dignity trampled underfoot. From then on, I would avoid asking him for money whenever possible. Even later, when Tom gave me the money to keep, I didn't dare to spend it. I was afraid of that contemptuous gaze, afraid of those faceless days. Before resigning, I was also a girl who loved beauty. After getting my salary, I would buy clothes and cosmetics, and life was easy and carefree. After leaving my job, I relied on Tom for my life. Even buying a piece of clothing that costs just a few dozen yuan requires careful consideration. In contrast, Tom said he needed to dress more decently for work, and even a casual piece of clothing was a brand name. Not to mention his shoes, which easily cost thousands of dollars a pair. Just thinking about this made me feel even more unbalanced. Why is it that I give everything for the family while he acts so recklessly, and I am so frugal? Every penny he earns is half mine, it's all marital property. If it weren't for my stable support at home, could he be so dedicated to his work? So, I opened the shopping website and quickly placed orders for a few pieces of clothing that I had wanted to buy for a long time. After doing all this, I felt quite relieved. Tom has been sleeping in the living room these days. Just now, when he swiped his card, he received a text message. He stormed into the bedroom in a fit of anger. The first sentence is a reproach to Jane, asking what she bought that cost so much money. "Clothes?" I said lightly, "Aren't you complaining about my shabby attire?" "I'm just getting some clothes to make a good impression." Tom's mood weakened a bit. "But you don't need to buy something so expensive. You're a housewife, and you don't go out, so why do you need to buy something good? Can't you just buy something random online?" Haha. I laughed so hard that tears came out. "Tom, you can't even support your wife buying clothes, why not just stay home and take care of the kids while I go to work?" When I left my job, my salary was higher than Tom's. Tom's face was bruised with anger, and he glared at me fiercely before slamming the door and leaving. The noise was so loud that it woke up my son. Little Bao rubbed his sleepy eyes and pounced into my arms, wiping the tears from my face. "Mommy, don't cry, Little Bao will be good." Mom didn't cry, she had something blown into her eyes by the wind. I tried hard to squeeze out a smile and picked up my son. Mom took the little one to eat something delicious. Because I secretly installed a tracker in Tom's car. So it was easy for me to know that after he left home, he went to find Lillian. Then the two of them went to the hotel again. As for what they did, I suppose adults know. I didn't feel much sadness in my heart. I will never forget the humiliation Tom inflicted on me during this time. My guess was not wrong. 2 hours later, Lillian sent me a message on Instagram. It was a few photos. There are pictures of her snuggling with Tom, of her taking selfies in front of the mirror, and of Tom's sleeping profile. This is Lillian's provocation to me, as well as the challenge she has thrown down. I still don't understand. Lillian is a local, and her family comes from a scholarly background. How could she do something like this? I remember when she was a naive and carefree little girl at the company. How did she suddenly become the third party destroying my family? Could it really be that Tom's charm is just too great? To be fair, Tom is a handsome guy. At least in a crowd, you would notice him at first glance. But that's because I helped him solve 80% of his tasks at home. If he had to stay up late for a few days to take care of the kids, would he still be so carefree? He looks all polished outside, but when he gets home, he doesn't even wash his socks and underwear. Is such a man really that desirable? Forget it, since there are people eager to have him, what does it matter if I let him go? I sent Lillian a message, "Take care of yourself," and saved all the photos she sent me one by one. These are all evidence. On the third day, I entrusted Little Bao to Auntie Wendy again. At the same time, I told her about Tom's infidelity. In response, Auntie Wendy expressed her anger and told me to go ahead and do my own thing without worry. She said she was at home and that I could bring the little one over for her to take care of. Because Lillian and I are colleagues and friends, I know about her family situation. She is a local, and her house is in an old neighborhood. Both of her parents are high school teachers and tend to be a bit aloof. I met them once before, although they didn't say much, I could sense that they looked down on me a bit, probably because they thought of me as an outsider, not as precious as they are. Because today is a weekend, there are many people in the community. Many elderly people are taking their children for a walk in the neighborhood. Relying on my memory, I found Lillian's home. Seeing me, Lillian's parents were somewhat surprised. When I informed them that their daughter was having an affair with my husband, I noticed the look of disbelief on their faces. Lillian's dad wanted to kick me out immediately. I directly printed out the photo Lillian sent me last time and slammed it on the table. Only then did they see the truth. I immediately called Lillian to ask her to come back. Since things have developed to this point, I no longer see the need to stay. It's better for them to resolve family matters on their own. When I came out, I deliberately put in the eye drops I had prepared earlier. Looking at my tear-filled eyes, it was quite pitiful. A warm-hearted aunt asked me what was wrong, and I didn't hide it. I revealed how Lillian was having an affair with my husband and even sent me photos to provoke me. They have been neighbors for decades, who doesn't know each other? Upon hearing this, they immediately comforted me, saying that Teacher Chin and his wife have lived a pure life, and it's unexpected that they have such an ungrateful daughter. This truly tarnishes the reputation of their community. Watching them gather in groups, pointing and whispering, I concealed my achievements and fame, and left with a wave of my sleeve. After returning home, the clothes I bought a few days ago arrived just in time. After trying them on, I found they fit quite well. Indeed, a person relies on their clothes just as a horse relies on its saddle. Once I put on the nice clothes, I immediately felt much more spirited. I bought some fruit and sent it to Auntie Wendy, and on the way back, I picked up Xiao Bao. Xiao Bao is a little warm-hearted boy, and he knows how to compliment me. Mom, you are really beautiful. I squint my eyes happily. Yes, not only does a mother need to dress beautifully, but she also needs to live beautifully. Lillian didn't make me wait too long. I guessed she had been upset by her parents and wanted to seek comfort from me. After the phone call came in, I put it on speaker. Jane, are you crazy? What do you think you're doing showing up at my house? You're really something, can't handle your own husband and think I'm an easy target. To be honest with you, the day after you married Tom, we were together. The night before you had the baby, he was also with me. Surprised, right? Unexpected, isn't it? You're just a loser, destined to never receive a man's love. You can rest assured, I will definitely not let you have it easy. Lillian's outburst left everyone present stunned. Sister Jane, was that Lillian on the phone just now? The person speaking is the receptionist from my previous company. Our relationship is quite good, and since today is the weekend, we organized this gathering, thinking of having afternoon tea together to relax a bit. I pretended to be unable to bear it, fully embodying the appearance of the victim. That's too much. I didn't expect her to be this kind of person. Sister Jane, you've been wronged. This is the HR from my previous company, the most warm-hearted person. Wherever there is injustice, she is there. They are all very, very good people. To be honest, if it weren't for necessity, I really wouldn't want to leave. It's not just because the salary is high, but also because every colleague is particularly kind and friendly. Of course, except for Lillian. They were indignant and decided to help me seek justice. I expressed my gratitude for this, but at the same time, I felt a bit embarrassed. After all, I had intentionally let them overhear. But the receptionist's words dispelled my unease. Sister Jane, you are not wrong, she is the one at fault. If we don't know her true nature, this time it's you, next time it could be me. We are girls, help, girls. Lillian has gone mad. Probably under the double pressure from home and the company, she broke down. I heard she has moved out of her parents' house and rented a place with Tom, starting a new life. And they tirelessly shared their happy lives with me. She thought that this would hurt me, that it would throw me into disarray. I'm sorry, I'm going to disappoint her. I've already started to take my son to look for a new place to live. I want to make a big move. My targets for revenge are not just her. I won't let Tom off the hook either. He is in procurement. He takes kickbacks both openly and secretly. Such matters, if no one reports them, can be overlooked, but when they are out in the open, not addressing them might not satisfy the public. So, early one morning, after settling my son, I went to Tom's company and reported him by name. This is the company's red line. The boss flew into a rage and dismissed Tom. Although he wasn't unemployed, his future was gone. It was satisfying. Indeed, when one's own interests are at stake, no one can remain calm. Some time ago, when I dealt with Lillian, Tom remained indifferent. Now that I've touched his cake, he went crazy. This time it's his turn, and he immediately lost his composure. I guess when you got off work, you came back. Standing in the living room, you shouted at me, Jane, you're such a fucking lunatic. What good does it do you to ruin me? Huh? You really have some skills, I want to see what you're capable of. Tom was furious, shaking his fist and wanting to hit me, disregarding all dignity and grace. The sun was originally resting in the room, and upon hearing the noise, he saw Tom about to make a move. He ran over, hugged Tom's leg, and bit him. Tom, this scumbag, actually picked up his son and threw him aside, just hitting the corner of the table. Little Bao's forehead immediately turned red. Poor thing, he's only 3 years old, and he's treated like this by his own father. Tom is simply a beast. Seeing this scene, he was also stunned, his lips trembling. I didn't mean to. I didn't have time to deal with him, so I picked up my son and took a taxi to the hospital. Fortunately, my son was fine, otherwise, I would have felt like killing Tom. On the way back, Xiaobao kept comforting me, Mom, it doesn't hurt. With such a large area turned red, how could it not hurt? Little Bao is afraid I will worry, so he deliberately says he is fine. Such a considerate child, Tom doesn't even know how to cherish him. Since that's the case, I will take my son and leave on my own. By the time I got home, Tom was already gone. He had sunk so low that he didn't even care about his own son, he was beyond saving. In fact, I intentionally provoked them. After all, on this day, I just want to get through it and then pretend to be deaf and mute. There's no need to make such a big fuss. But I am unwilling to accept it. Tom destroyed my most beautiful imagination of marriage. Whenever I think back to those days, I feel so suffocated that I want to die. The more angry and anxious they become, the more likely they are to make mistakes, and the more advantage I have. Now it is they who are in a hurry, not me. Tom has completely severed ties with me now. He is living with Lillian outside. I don't want them to have it easy, so from time to time I post a few messages on Tom's Instagram asking him to forgive me, grossing out Lillian. How could a woman like her, who became the mistress, resist checking Tom's phone? After all, it all started on the phone. I later thought that perhaps their first contact was facilitated by me. At that time, Tom, as my boyfriend, had met Lillian once with me. To show goodwill, he even added her contact information. But none of that matters anymore. Lillian was getting crazier. Every time I sent a soft message to Tom on Instagram, Lillian would crazily send me their happy moments. Whether it's text, images, or videos. I even feel like I might understand their lives better than Tom does. As for Tom, he might feel that I am fragmented. When I see him, I'm like a shrew, making a fuss. When I don't see him, I'm as docile as a little lamb. He must think that I do all this to win him back. He is just that confident. Unlike Tom's methodical approach, Lillian would definitely be unable to hold back. After all, she has neither fame nor a job right now, and she isn't as carefree as I am. She must hold on tightly to Tom, otherwise, all her suffering would be in vain. About a month later, Lillian was pregnant. She was the one who told me this news. Her exact words were, "Jane, wait to be divorced." After hearing this news, I felt a sense of relief. Lillian really didn't let me down. I knew she would come up with a brilliant move. Actually, there's no tearing part. It's just Lillian linking her arm with Tom's, flaunting it to me with a smug look. The doctor said that the one in my belly is a boy. It's not just you who can have children, I can also carry on the family line for Tom. She still thinks she lives in a feudal society. I didn't say anything, just dressed myself in a particularly shabby way. In contrast to Lillian's elegance, my disheveled appearance was highlighted even more. After Tom glanced at me, it was as if he had seen something filthy, his nostrils flaring up to the sky. I remained completely calm. I'm not interested in the house, but I demand 80% of the money in the family. Tom disagreed, so I took out the photos Lillian had sent me before. The more Tom looked, the worse his expression became, and in the end, he glared at Lillian fiercely. Anyway, I can wait. Lillian's belly can't wait. The two of them discussed for a long time and finally agreed. I know this must be Lillian's doing. Little treasure, Tom hesitated a bit. Lillian immediately spoke up. Tom, just give little treasure to Jane. Have you forgotten the last time he bit you? It drew blood. Tom seemed to have made up his mind. The son belongs to you. But don't think I'll pay child support. I don't care for it. Fearing that the night would bring more dreams, I quickly drafted the divorce agreement and went with Tom to the Civil Affairs Bureau to complete the formalities. But because of the new policy, I have to wait another month to officially get divorced. I can only pray that nothing unexpected happens during this month. Otherwise, all my efforts will be in vain. Fortunately, everything went smoothly. On the day of the divorce, Tom brought Lillian along to humiliate me. Just after we received our divorce certificate, they queued up again to get their marriage certificate. This operation left the staff in a daze. As she stepped out, Lillian waved the red booklet in her hand. Jane. You lost. I don't want to pay attention to those two. I'm anxious to go back and pick up Xiaobao, and since we've all divorced, they have no value to me anymore. Who would still play with them? After seeing Xiaobao, I have already made up my mind. There is nothing worth missing in this city anymore. I plan to return to my hometown. My hometown is a small county in a 5th or 6th tier city. I don't know if it's the fear of returning home. The closer I got, the more anxious I felt. Back then, I took a gamble to marry Tom. Now, having returned from my divorce, can my parents still forgive me? Standing at the doorstep, I hesitated. Xiaobao whispered to my mom, "Where is this?" I couldn't help but smile wryly. "This is Grandma and Grandpa's home." Just as I was struggling at the door, my dad came back from grocery shopping. Seeing the white hair on my father's head, I couldn't help but cry out. Mom and Dad didn't blame me. After learning everything Tom had done, they felt immense pity for me. My brother was even ready to set off to city and immediately to confront Tom. Seeing my family look at me without any reservations, I felt a warmth in my heart. At the same time, I felt deeply ashamed of my past recklessness. Mom and Dad are very fond of Xiaobao. They make me feel at ease to stay at home. I did not agree. Although my brother cares for me a lot, and my sister-in-law is also very kind, I understand the principle of far fragrance, near stink. I don't want my brother and sister-in-law to harbor any resentment because of my divorced sister-in-law. After living at home for half a month, I found a house in the county. The previous landlord wanted to go out of town, so he wanted to sell the house in the county. The price was quite reasonable, and it came with renovations. I thought it over and decided to buy it. When I got divorced, Tom gave me just enough money. With my own house, I finally felt a bit more secure. On moving day, I was especially happy. I specially prepared a big feast at my new home to entertain my family. After my parents and brother-in-law left, only Xiaobao and I were left at home. I held Xiaobao in my arms. From now on, it would just be the two of us living our lives together. Life in a small city is very peaceful. Although there is no nightlife, it brings a sense of tranquility. There are just not many job opportunities. I searched through all the job recruitment apps but couldn't find a job. I have no choice but to plan to start a small business myself. After all, I need to support myself and my son. I remember that I used to enjoy baking. I would often bake little cakes and cookies for my son to eat. I don't know if setting up a small stall here will work. Without hesitation, I bought the materials and an oven. The first batch I baked was praised by my parents and my brother and sister-in-law, which boosted my confidence a bit. At first, I set up a stall at the school gate. In the evening, I would go to the night market to sell. Because the taste was good, clean, and quite popular. By the second month, I had repeat customers. Later, my business got better and better, to the point where it was a bit in short supply. I started taking orders on Instagram. I hired a younger brother from my wife's family to deliver the goods. A year later, my cake shop became more and more popular. I rented a storefront near my home and opened the shop. Half a year later, I had earned enough money to pay off the mortgage, and with the remaining money, I bought a small van. Xiaobao has already started kindergarten. I have also welcomed a new life. I never expected to encounter Tom again in this small town of mine. You see, we have been divorced for 3 years. The busy life has made me forget about my previous life for a long time. It's just that Tom now looks a bit disheveled, and he's starting to get gray hair. He looked at me, still a bit hesitant to recognize me. Jane, you really have changed a lot. Yes, I am living comfortably now, with no financial pressure. In my free time, I take care of my skin and work out. Although I am already 33 years old, the people around me say I look about 20-something. Perhaps it's the good fortune that keeps me youthful. I can now be considered a small boss of sorts. Facing Tom's scrutiny, I felt a bit impatient. I still have to pick up my son from school later. If you have something to say, just say it. Tom seemed a bit hesitant. Jane, I regret it. Can we go back to the past? What? I seem to have heard a huge joke. You spilled water on the ground, and can you still take it back? Jane, I really regret it. Please forgive me, let's live well as a family. Tom said as he tried to grab my hand, and I couldn't avoid it. Just then, my brother came over to find me and saw it. I used to worry about not being able to find him, but now he had delivered himself right to my doorstep. I had to give him a good beating. After Tom, that coward, took a punch, he ran away in fright. Strange things happened. The next day, Lillian came as well. Her current appearance was a far cry from before. Previously, she was youthful and beautiful, with a refined, bourgeois air, but now she looked as if she had aged 10 years. It felt especially like the former me had been drained by certain things. Could it be that something had happened? I pondered in my heart while keeping a close watch on Xiaobao. I always felt that their intentions were not good. Later, I realized that they really were quite unfortunate. After they got married, there was a time when they argued in the car, and unfortunately, another car accident occurred. This time they were not so lucky. Lillian's pride and joy had a miscarriage, and Tom seemed to have injured some function of his. Tom, in his 30s, desperately wanted a child, but Lillian just couldn't conceive. Moreover, Tom's mother moved from the countryside to the city. The three of them were crammed into a small room of just a few dozen square meters, with conflicts arising everywhere, and war was on the verge of breaking out. So Tom thought of me. He also started thinking about little Treasure. What a joke, does he really think I would be foolish? Or would little Treasure recognize him as his father? Tom appeared at the door of my little shop every day to seek my forgiveness, hoping to win me over and then take away Xiaobao. 'Cause Xiaobao was no longer that 3-year-old child. According to him, he was now 6 years old, a little man who could protect his mother. Every time I see Tom, he looks right through me. Mom, Dad is not a good person. Although Xiaobao said this inappropriately, I didn't correct him. Not all mistakes can be made right. At first, Tom was indeed very patient, playing the role of a responsible father every day, caring for the little one. Later, perhaps he grew tired of it, or maybe he just lost his patience. He started taking shortcuts. He actually wanted to secretly take Xiaobao away. When the kindergarten teacher told me this news, I was almost fainted with anger. After realizing what was happening, I immediately called my brother and drove to chase after them. Just thinking about how they forcibly took Xiaobao away made my heart ache. Fortunately, someone noticed the anomaly and thought that Tom and the others were human traffickers, so they called the police, which is how we managed to stop Xiaobao. After this incident, I truly despised Tom. My brother beat him up fiercely. Scared, Tom ran back to city and overnight. As he left, Lillian looked at me with anger and said, "All these sins I'm bearing now are because of you." I curled my lips and let out a cold laugh. Well, I really have to thank you for rescuing me. Since you like to take my things, I wish you and Tom would never be apart. Two disasters should stay together, after all. A year later, Xiaobao started elementary school. I also stepped out of the shadows of the past and began to recover. My mom said to have the neighbors and introduce me to someone. I refused. I feel that my life is pretty good right now. I have money, leisure, and a son. I can also be with my parents and take care of my family. My mom advised me that when Xiaobao grows up and no one is there to keep you company, you'll understand loneliness. I thought about it carefully, but I still felt it was not right. Although I am not disappointed in men, I do have some resistance to romantic relationships. Moreover, in life, there are many other important things besides love. If one day I meet someone who can give me the courage to step back into the halls of marriage, it would mean I am truly fortunate. But if not, I am not afraid. Life should not be monotonous. I have my own brilliance.